I think the modern Democratic Party is an existential threat to the Republic. And although I am a Democrat, I've been a Democrat my whole life, the party that I see in front of me today is literally the inverse of the party I signed up for. This is now the party of war. This is the party of racism. This is the party of censorship. I don't recognize this party. There is no conceivable scenario in which I would vote for Kamala Harris. I just simply will not do it. Am I open to voting for Trump? I am. I'm especially open to it if he is partnered with Bobby Kennedy, because what that tells me is that my values, which are a much closer match for Bobby's, are represented in that administration.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
In 2020, the World Health Organization looked at 180 countries around the world. RFK Jr. just said that our children are now the unhealthiest, sickest children in the world. The World Health Organization said, yeah, we ranked 39th in the world out of 180 countries. So not as good as it could be, but nowhere near the worst. And when he kept saying, don't you want a safe environment for your children? Don't you want a safe environment for your children? It's important to remember Trump, as president, rolled back dozens of measures out there to make clean water, clean air, the very things that create a clean environment for our children.
Okay, so last Friday we had some of the biggest news in this election so far, a massive shakeup in the election. RFK Jr. dropped out of the race after being blackballed by the Democrats, after being sabotaged, after being silenced and censored by the left-wing media for over a year. He dropped out of the race and immediately endorsed Trump. So the left, they're mad at this, they're fuming, and we're going to get into CNN in a second, trying to downplay it, trying to talk trash about it. Oh, it's not a big deal, he's a nobody, stuff like that. But before we get into that, let's look at this rally. Donald Trump had a rally in the Phoenix area and invited RFK to come speak. First time we see these two men on stage together, and it was pretty epic. Let's look at a few highlights of it.
For the past 16 months, Bobby has run an extraordinary campaign for President of the United States. I know, because he also went after me a couple of times. I didn't like it. And I mean this sincerely. Had he been allowed to enter the Democrat primary, he would have easily beaten Joe Biden, but they wouldn't let him in. They put up rules. I've never seen rules like he had to have 65% of the vote in order to run, you know, little things like that. It's true. Amazing. But I tell you, I have never had more people ask me, please, sir, release the documents on the Kennedy assassination. And we're going to do that. And I also want to salute Bobby's decades of work as an advocate for the health of our families and our children. Nobody's done more. Millions and millions of Americans who want clean air, clean water, and a healthy nation have concerns about toxins in our environment and pesticides in our food. That's why today I'm repeating my pledge to establish a panel of top experts working with Bobby to investigate what is causing the decades-long increase in chronic health problems and childhood diseases, including autoimmune disorders, autism, obesity, infertility, and many more. We want every child in America to grow up and to live a long and healthy life.
Issues that he talked about was having safe food and ending the chronic disease epidemic. He said he didn't want any more $200 billion wars in Ukraine, that we could use that money back here in the United States.
So this right here shows you how mature voters think, how most voters should think, but a lot of voters are completely emotional, voting for people off of feelings, voting for people off of skin color. Oh, the DNC was so fun. We had rappers and it was so feel good and I like the vibes, therefore I'm going to vote. oh, Orange Man bad. I don't like him. He's mean, so I'm going to vote against him. Stuff like that, completely emotional. But when you see people put their feelings aside and logically think to themselves, what's best for the country? What's best for my family? What's best for my pocketbook? You don't have to agree with someone on 100% of the issues in order to support him. I don't agree with Trump on 100% of everything. I have issues with some of Trump's positions. That doesn't mean I'm going to say, oh, well, I'm not going to vote for him because I agree with all of this here, but these few things over here I disagree. So look at someone like Elon Musk, Trump. They had a conversation on Spaces on X, and you can just tell that Elon and Trump, they don't get along 100%. They don't agree 100%, but Elon still endorses Trump because he sees that this is the best way forward for the country. This is the best way forward for business. And RFK, in the same manner, he sees between Kamala, between the left-wing Democrats, between these communists, and between Trump, Trump is the best option. This is the best option for the country. RFK knew that he didn't have a path to victory, so he just said, okay, let me bow out and help Trump. Otherwise, these communists are going to continue to destroy the country. So before we get into CNN, let's look at Fox News. RFK sat down with Fox News yesterday morning and answered a few questions, some questions that a lot of his supporters are going to have, and a lot of the Democrats are going to try to use against him. They're going to try to say he was anti-Trump, he was talking crap about Trump, now all of a sudden he's endorsing him. But let's look at RFK explain his positions.
Okay, so let's get this out of the way up front. You and President Trump not always fans of each other. He posted on social media earlier this year, he's one of the most liberal lunatics ever to run for office. A phony radical left fool whose poll numbers are terrible and getting worse. The New Yorker said just a couple of weeks ago this: in a recent text exchange, Kennedy told one person that Trump was a terrible human being, the worst president ever and barely human. He is probably a sociopath. Now, I haven't read your text, so you can speak to that. But how did you get from that position to Friday night?
Well, it became clear to me that I did not have a path to victory. 16 months of censorship, of not being able to get on any network really except for Fox. And I had, in fact, when Ross Perot ran, in the 10 months that he ran, he had 34 appearances on the networks. I had 2 appearances in 16 months. So I was blocked out from the networks. I was blocked out from the debate. I had no path to victory. President Trump had been reaching out to me. And I talked to him a few hours after the assassination attempt, and we had a long conversation by phone. I then had 2 extensive meetings.
It's a good unifying theme that I think a lot of people could get around. It's how we get there. That's always the devil is in the details. Have you all negotiated over or talked about a cabinet position, another position within a Trump government in exchange for your endorsement?
No, there's been no commitments. But I met with President Trump, with his family, with his closer advisors, and we just made a general commitment that we were going to work together.
What about the states where you're trying to get off of a number of swing state ballots to say, I'm going to stay on a number of state ballots, but in these swing states, I'm going to try to withdraw myself and ask my supporters, or at least you're telling them, think about supporting President Trump. Did you negotiate over which states you would try to withdraw from?
Yeah, I mean, we all knew which states they were. There basically is 10 swing states where my presence in the race would have helped Vice President Harris and would have harmed President Trump. So I'm going to get off the ballot in those states, and then we're going to stay on the ballot in 30 states. And, I'm encouraging people to vote for me in those states. Those are states where the votes, they're either all red or all blue states where their votes are not going to change the outcome of the race. But in the states where I would have been a spoiler, I'm going to get out. So it's about 10 states.
Okay, so there were reports a couple weeks ago citing an official from your camp and also a Democratic official saying that there'd been outreach to the Harris camp as well to possibly discuss you working within the Harris administration in exchange for an endorsement of her. Is that true? And what happened with that?
I reached out to them on the same basis that I reached out to President Trump, and we actually talked to other presidential candidates, including Chase Oliver and the Libertarian Party, about figuring out ways that we could and the polarization and the hatred and the vitriol start talking about issues. And I was welcome to listen to anything from the Democrats that they were going to do something about the war, about the Ukraine war, about the censorship, about the child health crisis, this epidemic of chronic disease that has now disabled about 60% of our kids.
So the Dems did this to themselves. Like I said, they had an opportunity for a primary. You saw Trump saying that if RFK had a fair primary to go against Joe Biden, he likely would have won. But the Democrats, the DNC, sabotaged. They rigged the primary and made sure, I think it was 4 people, Dean Phillips, RFK, and Marion Williamson, somebody else, I don't even remember. They were all in a primary running against Joe, but you wouldn't know that because the media, the left-wing media, suppressed all of these people and made it seem like Joe was the only one. We had states, the Democrats in states, literally canceling the primary. So Joe Biden was supposed to go against these people, like in Florida, for example. And Democrats in Florida were supposed to take a vote on who they wanted their nominee to be. But the DNC, they said, you know what, we're going to cancel the whole vote. We don't give a damn. Oh, y'all wanted to vote for RFK in Florida? No, we don't care. We're giving all of the delegates to Biden. And they did that in a couple other states. Completely rigged it. And RFK finally realized that the Democrat Party was not for him. And that's when he left. And now he's with Trump. And the Democrats, they got a problem with it. But they didn't have a problem when he was sabotaged, when the DNC rigged the election against him. Where was all this noise? All these people talking crap about RFK. Oh, he's switching sides. Oh, he's a traitor. Oh, why is he joining Trump? Where were all of these loudmouths when the DNC rigged the primary against him and the left-wing media suppressed them and wouldn't let them talk, anything like that? Crickets. They don't give a damn about fairness or anything like that. They just want their person to win. Their installed candidate, they're just upset now because this move looks like it's going to help Trump. And speaking of that, we're going to look at this CNN poll. We're going to look at this poll with John King. I think he does an overall good job, decent job explaining the polls. So we're going to look at CNN talking about how RFK being in the race between Trump and Kamala affects Trump and Kamala, and how him dropping out of the race affects things. So let's take a look.
Right, and so we've talked about him for months, about the prospect of a third-party candidate, a decent number, and who would that impact. We talked a bit earlier about how different tone-wise Kamala Harris running against Donald Trump. A smaller field also, yes, maybe Robert Kennedy endorses Donald Trump. Maybe I'm a bit of a contrarian here. I'm going to make the argument that still helps Kamala Harris, and let me explain why. This is 2020. You see Donald Trump, he's at 47% if you round that up, right? 46.8. You go back to 2016, Donald Trump is at 46.4, essentially the same number. Even though turnout was much bigger in 2020, significantly higher, Donald Trump got the same number, just shy of 47 right there. There is not, at least there's no evidence, if we have 2 campaigns, who knows what this one is like, but before us right now, there is zero evidence that there is majority support for Trump or Trumpism nationally or even in the battleground states in 2016 when Donald Trump won Michigan, but only with 48%. He couldn't get to 50. That was Wisconsin, I'm sorry. This is Michigan. He won Michigan with 48%. He couldn't get to 50. Let's drop down to Pennsylvania. He won Pennsylvania with 49%. He couldn't get to 50. Then you come to 2020, and you go through the same states. Again, he's at 49%. And you come out here, and you come over to Michigan. This time Joe Biden flipped the blue wall back. He's at 48%. And you come over to Wisconsin, and he's at 49% if you round it up. That's close to 50%, but it's not 50%. So what's the difference? In the 2020 campaign, the third-party candidates combined got about 2%. In the 2016 campaign, go back there, 2016 campaign, the third-party candidates combined got about 6%, just shy of 6%. That was a huge difference. One last point, Kennedy getting out, we'll see what happens. We talked about this on your show, Anderson, a long time ago. Back in May, I was raising the prospect, are we going to have a 1992-like Perot campaign with a third-party candidate getting into double digits? Because he was at 9% in Michigan, 10% in Pennsylvania, 9% in Wisconsin, the other third-party candidates well below. This is back in May. Here's where we were a week or so ago. We're using the exact same poll, New York Times Siena poll here, so it's apples and apples. down to 5% in Michigan, 5% in Pennsylvania, 6% in Wisconsin. I've seen data since this. This poll ended almost 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago. I've seen data since then that shows those numbers. It's a different poll, but the number's even a bit lower. So Robert F. Kennedy's numbers are going down. His fundraising is also going down. So he's going to step aside. Maybe he endorses Trump, but I would say from 2020 and 2016, the lesson is the fewer candidates, the better for the Democrats. We will see if that holds this time.
Now, as we can see in these polls, RFK was actually sinking. His support in some of these swing states was actually cut in half. And some people are believing that him dropping out of the race helps Kamala, because historically, when you have these third-party candidates in a race like in 2016, you had Jill Stein. Some people are saying that Jill Stein spoiled it. She took votes from Hillary in the swing states and helped Trump. And they're believing that RFK could have had the same effect. He could have stolen votes from Kamala and helped Trump. But when you look at how these polls shifted, it actually appears that this time RFK dropping out may help Trump, because RFK was sitting at about 10% in some of these swing states. But when they got rid of Joe, a lot of that support for RFK went back to the Democrats. So a lot of Democrats, they saw Joe was old and senile, about to drop dead at any moment. Parkinson's, dementia, all that. So a lot of them, on top of the Bidenomics, horrific Bidenomics, a lot of them decided to support Kennedy. But now that they got rid of Joe and they replaced him with this communist lady, they've gone back. High off the DNC, the honeymoon phase of Kamala, the media acting like Kamala is the best thing ever. A lot of those Democrats who were supporting Kennedy have now gone back to the Democrat Party and they're supporting Kamala, which meant that Kennedy staying in a race was actually going to hurt Trump more than it was going to hurt Kamala. And even Kennedy saw that. He said, okay, I need to get out of this thing, because I was playing a spoiler against the Democrats. Now I'm playing a spoiler against Trump. To confirm this, we're going to need to wait a couple of weeks to get some polls, some new data. We need new polls in, because this just happened 3 days ago. We need about 2 weeks for this to settle in to the voter base and for the polls to come in. And we'll really see RFK out of the race. Where exactly do the voters stand and who did they impact the most? But let's look at CNN bitching and fuming about RFK. They were watching the rally with Trump and RFK down there in Phoenix, and they're upset about it. We saw them earlier when RFK first dropped out of the race and he was listing all of his reasons why he had to drop out of the race. CNN cut him off. They're like, wait, we don't need you exposing the corruption in the Democrat Party. Yeah, of course the DNC sabotaged you. Of course we coordinated to censor you. But no, you're not supposed to expose that. You're not supposed to expose the fact that Kamala Harris is an empty suit politician bought and paid for by the elite of the Democrat Party. But let's take a look.
Obviously hitting on his key issues. Right. Chronic disease, which was the one that fell on the most fertile ears with a lot of people, right? Autoimmune diseases and infertility and obesity, big food, all of that. Foreign policy, neocons, make America healthy again. The line. All right, but as you say, those aren't specifically chronic disease, anything you've ever heard Trump say before.
Yeah, no, I actually looked earlier. I looked because what he just said there, what RFK said, is what he said when he dropped out earlier today. I looked to see if Donald Trump could ever mention chronic disease, particularly in this context, and he had not. I mean, he did this. I mean, look, it's Donald Trump. There's pictures of the guy eating McDonald's on his plane. Like, this is not a guy who's deeply dedicated to healthy eating, right? I mean, the other things he said, like the thing about censorship, just total nonsense, right? He's referring to this Twitter file stuff, which has been debunked 1,000 times over. He said Donald Trump's going to protect us from totalitarianism because of the censorship thing. Like, all these things that he's saying.
Right.
Again, you know, to go back to the point that he also tried to get Kamala Harris to, like, give him a deal as well. So, I mean, it's also just, like, starkly insincere in a way that I think is pretty remarkable.
Mm-hmm. And yet, I mean, obviously you hear that's a rally, so you're going to have the response you have, Aisha, but is it possible that this does fall on some fertile ears, particularly because he's leading with the issue that many people found compelling, right? The issue of chronic disease is an issue that Americans do face.
But even the communication of it just felt a little bit incoherent to me. And that's the thing that struck me, because it actually did feel rather Trump-light in that he repeated the same 3 lines twice, once at the beginning, then coming back to it, don't you want it to be safe for your kids and to get rid of chemicals in food, right? So beginning it was formulaic. It felt like a whole lot of ramble in the middle. It felt contradictory as well, because he went into this thing about totalitarianism and do you want somebody who's going to weaponize the government against you, when in fact that's exactly what Donald Trump has threatened to do time and time again, is weaponize the government against his enemies, essentially. So it all felt like really aligned with this rally because it's just as rambling and incoherent as most of what Trump has to say.
Mark,
There you have it. They have nothing. They just want to downplay everything because their candidate is trash. They have nothing to offer to the American people but an empty suit puppet trash candidate. So let me know what you guys think about this. Leave me your thoughts below. Share the video. Thanks for watching.